Setting up and scheduling your Zoom webinars. One of the best things about the Zoom platform is that you can scale up from a starting point of 100 participants and grow to a maximum of 10,000 participants. As the host of your Zoom webinar, you will be able to share your screen for your presentation and also play videos and audio files if you need to. There is also a built-in chat function for your webinars where you can ask your audience questions and they can ask you questions. Interaction is very important for a successful webinar. In order to use the Zoom webinar platform, you will need to invest in their webinar plan. At the time of writing this training, a 100-participant webinar costs $14.99 per month, and the cost will go up based on the number of participants that you want. Use the webinar registration feature. We recommend that you take advantage of a registration process for all of your webinars, and Zoom will provide this. If for some reason you do not want your audience to register first, then you can disable this so that they can just click on the URL that you provide to join the webinar. With the webinar registration process, you have two methods available to approve people. One, you can manually approve webinar registrants. As the host, you can decide who can attend your webinar and who can't. Those approved will receive an email with the joining instructions. Two, you can choose the automatic approval option. Here, everyone that registers for your webinar will be automatically approved and receive a joining instructions email. Registration process customization. We will assume that you will want attendees to register for your webinars prior to attending. It really is the best way to go. The people that you invite to your webinar will need to complete a form which will ask them to provide their name and email address and any other information that you require. Using the Zoom webinar platform, you will be able to import all of your registrants with a CSV file. So, if you have an existing email list of leads, you can create a CSV file from this and then automatically import them as attendees for your webinar. You have full control over the registration page for your webinar. You can add your logo for branding, customize the theme of the page, add your own description so that those invited understand what they will gain from attending, and notify about special guests, etc. The emails used in the registration process are also customizable. You decide what goes in these emails and which emails you want Zoom to send out for you. It is also possible for you to use a number of different URLs so that you can track where your attendees are located. Scheduling your Zoom webinars. Scheduling a Zoom webinar is very straightforward, but you will need to provide accurate information. You just need to sign into your Zoom web portal and then click on the Webinars option. Here, you will be able to see a list of all of the webinars that you have scheduled, if you have done this. Look for the Schedule a Webinar tab, and this will take you into the webinar settings screen. Here, you can enter a title or topic of your webinar, and then a description of the webinar beneath this. The description is optional, but we recommend that you add information here as it will be displayed on your registration page. If you have created a webinar template before, then you can apply this. When you first set up a webinar, you can save all of the settings in the form of a template, which makes it easier for you when you want to schedule the same webinar again. The next step is to enter the date and the time of your webinar. After that, you will need to enter an estimated duration for your webinar. This is just for scheduling, and you are not going to be held to this time. We recommend that you enter 1 hour here. The time zone defaults to that in your profile, but you can change this. For example, if you live outside of the United States, but most of your attendees will come from there, then you can change the time zone to one that U.S. citizens will be familiar with, such as Eastern Standard Time, EST. Recurring webinars. Next, you will have the option to set up your webinar as recurring. Each Zoom webinar is assigned a unique ID, and when you choose this option, the same ID will be used. You will need to choose how often you want your webinar to repeat, in other words, weekly, daily, monthly, or no fixed time. There will be other options dependent on your recurring settings. For example, you can configure the webinar to end after a set number of repeats or set an exact date for the recurring to stop. Registration options. Next are the attendee registration options. You will need to decide if you want your attendees to register for more than one of your recurring webinars or all of them. Or you can force people to register for each webinar event, recommended. There is also an option for attendees to register for more than one recurring webinar event. Video and audio. As the host, you can decide if you want your video turned on or off when you join the webinar. Even if you decide to turn this off, you can start it at any time during the webinar. If you have special guests attending, then you can set their video options to on or off as well. We recommend that you set this to on if they are going to present. Next, you can choose the audio options that you want. You can choose computer audio and telephone audio, recommended, or computer audio only or telephone audio only. You may want to set a password for the webinar, which is the next option. This means that attendees will need to enter the password prior to joining the webinar. Questions and Answers panel. The Questions and Answer panel is next. You need to tell Zoom if you want a Q&A panel for your webinar, which we always recommend. With this enabled, you will have full control over the session as the host. You have the option to answer a question live by speaking the answer or to answer through typing. It is also possible for you to dismiss certain questions if you want. You can open them up again afterwards. If you want to allow upvoting of questions and answers, you can do this too. Automatically record your webinar. This is something that we definitely recommend that you enable. You have the option to store the recording on your desktop or in the Zoom cloud. You can use the recording of your webinar as a replay to send to those that could not attend the live event. These are the main options that you need to set up. When you are happy with everything, click on Schedule. Starting your webinar. When you are ready to start your webinar, you will need to log into your Zoom portal and then click on Webinars. Find the webinar that you have scheduled for the current date and time and click on the Start button. Your webinar is now live. In the next video, we will look at personal strategies you can use to increase your engagement when using Zoom.